So you'll tell everybody what the topic is, right?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. It'll be an interesting one tonight. So I'm going to get this set up. Let me just see if I can actually. There we go. Perfect. I'm going to pin
So you're
this.
not making this a live meeting any longer.
We have one on Tuesdays now called Overlay, and this is all Mike's idea. And I'm hoping to get Mike back on Mondays because I really enjoy having his input on the weekly topic. This week, I'll be joined by Johnny Cruz, who's a good old friend of ours. We've all known each other for about 10 years from Seattle. And he is really into this interesting personality system called objective personality. That's a very deep Jungian system from the work of Carl Jung. And it's all about the personality. And so in human design, we're really looking more at the design and the mechanics. But I think it can really help differentiate because the lens I want to look at it tonight through the lens of human design is that these are characteristics that are not in the human design body graph, because so many people try to use the body graph to generalize certain characteristics of personality. Oh, this person has a personality like this. That person has a personality like that. You don't really know. I mean, yeah, we have personality. IFK 26. Okay, yeah, I have a personality that's going to be like a little bit like a car salesman or something. Sure. Okay, an entrepreneurial personality. At the same time, the personality crystal and the passenger that's kind of experiencing the ride is that is something that has its own characteristics that you can't really predict from the body graph. Like I've heard people make a lot of generalizations. So I think if there is one takeaway from tonight, it'll be as we're learning about this personality system, it's like, yeah, we can generalize and categorize, but we shouldn't try to. It's really, people are so specific. We should see what they do with that body graph. You could have two people born at the same time with totally different expressions of the exact same body graph. So it's really cool to see how that unfolds. And that's partly also, I think, studying the personality type. It's kind of like rave psychology. Like we're not studying really the design mechanics, we're studying the personality. And it's just, yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
So
So
what
I'm
I was going to say is one of my other interests, other than human design, I have quite a few interests, but one of them is Enneagrams. So that's like personality typing too, but very different from anything that we can see in a human design chart. But you're muted right now.
Yeah, no, I just muted for a second because I'm actually going to change microphones. I'm realizing it's already 5 o'clock. Hey, Christine, welcome and glad to have you. And I'm going to actually just, we'll have to start in about 3 minutes. I have new microphones here and I'm on the phone. So I actually am kind of connected twice. So I'm actually on the computer and the phone here. And I'm going to take this outside. This was Johnny's idea. So Johnny's going to be my guest tonight. We did this once before and the audio seemed to be okay. If we use these microphones, then we can actually be outside and the wind isn't too bad because they're like lapel microphones. And so I'm just going to grab a jacket. And the idea was to have a nice sunset outside. And he's somebody who I've known for, well, I guess over 10 years now. And he's been into objective personality, which is this really interesting, pretty obscure personality type theory based on the work of Carl Jung. So just like Myers-Briggs is based on Carl Jung, so is objective personality. And he'll be introducing this concept from that system developed by Dave Powers and Shannon Renee, who are a husband and wife duo out of Portland, Oregon. He'll be basically talking about the animals, which is a system that they came up with. So it's not human design, but we're going to be applying a human design lens to it. I'm going to change microphones, and so I will be back momentarily with Johnny.
I'll chat with Christine. We are getting recorded, though. We need to remember that.
We have no secrets. What are you talking? I have the 59.6. Let's go. How are you, love?
I have 659 as one of my channels too. So how are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm having all sorts of like childhood wounds coming up to be reparented, and I just realized that probably the most traumatic experience in my life was losing my dog exactly a Jupiter cycle ago. And so according to the like mundane estimates, it's 4,330 days or so, which would be exactly the day that I put him down to today. But the HD mandala actually puts it within 5 minutes or so short of the 24-hour mark past my birthday, which is the April the 8th, which is the day of the next big eclipse. So that's actually when Jupiter will be in the exact gate, line, color, tone, and base of right around the exact moment that I had to put that dog down, which was the most emotionally like, moment ever. At which point I said, huh?
So that was 12 years ago?
That was exactly from
Jupiter.
Yeah, a full Jupiter cycle. So the mundane estimates put it like exactly today, and then the actual gates and lines and everything line up exactly a month from now, which is within like exactly minus a couple of like 5 minutes short of the exactly 24 hours past my exact birth time.
Interesting.
So
Interesting.
it's random, but also synchronistic.
My father died on this day 21 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Must be a powerful day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the first time in my life where I realized we need to sell T-shirts that say, yes, I'm this upset. No, I'm not ready to talk about it.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
it was the first time I was ever like, no, I cannot eat. I cannot talk. I cannot function because I'm just at the absolute lowest point that I have ever felt in my life. And I just felt like I needed to wear a shirt to say, look, I can't right now. So, like, we need to sell those T-shirts at every hospital and every, funeral home. Like, yeah, I'm this upset, and no, I'm not ready to talk about it. Just not ready.
Have you pursued designing that T-shirt?
I have not, but I've been designing all sorts of fun T-shirts.
Yeah, but
I've been having all sorts of fun.
Really good and really helpful to lots of people.
Yes, very much so. So I think that needs to be a thing. So that feels practical and very 5'1", doesn't it?
I think it sounds very practical. Yes, I'm a 5'2".
Okay.
Yeah.
So you feel me.
Yeah. So we may have some similarities other than companionship on that channel. So that's great. What other definition do you have?
I have everything except a wide open G center. So I have like a mental projector, outer authority with the channel of abstraction, and like a double 61 and lines 1 and 2. Let's see, I have the same cross as Ra, which is across the clarion. So that 61.1 is part of my cross, and then the 61.2 is my moon. So that conscious moon. So I feel like that's deep and important and under the hood. And then that's one separate part of my triple split. And then my 59.6 is my sacral and my solar plexus, which has like the gate 22 in Mercury, and like double 30s south nodes, and 30.1 unconscious Venus, and double Uranus 14.1 monies and everything, and double North Node in 29, 4 and 6, and Mars personality in line 2 of 29. So that's that section over there. And then I've got the channel of like transformation and ambition headed up, and I've got the channel of the transmitter coming across, and then I've got the brainwave coming up.
Goodness,
so with like the 62 and the 51, which is the sun, and the 40 is my unconscious Jupiter. So I'm very tribal and provider, but also very individual and collective, and because I have the abstraction. And so I've got all the things, and a lot of things don't make sense together, but I think they make me a good translator. Like I'm half right and half left. So I can explain rightness to right people, but also rightness to left people. And I can explain leftness to left people, but also leftness to left people, or rightness to left people. So
where are you pointing on your variable and things? Oh, fun.
They make fairy wings.
So you really are artistic. You really
I,
need
I
to do that job of the designing the t-shirts. That's beautiful.
I guess that counts as artistic. I don't know. I just threw some stuff on here, but yeah. So my closed taste and my Pope theist are like pressing in on my head, causing pressure there, and then my left natural shores and my right wanting view are like pulling apart. They make
Yeah.
fairy rings, and I just think that is so me.
But I think you have exactly the opposite variable to me.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, interesting.
Yeah, so right brained and left minded, but left environment and right perspective. So I'm one of the inside out people.
Yeah, and I'm one of those crossover people, but with exactly the opposite.
Cool. That's awesome.
Interesting. Yeah. Oh, well, so how did you find Signpost and Jonah and everybody?
I don't remember. I think it was Teresa and Brandy's fault, maybe. Maybe. I found Jonah.
Incident-
Well, I found Jonah a while back. Today's my 4 year. Like HD found me on March 4th, 2020. So maybe a year or two in, I found Jonah, just sort of as like one of many people I was looking through. And then then I found Teresa and Brandy, and I was watching a couple of the coffee talks. And he mentioned the conference, and then somehow I got in touch with James Alexander about getting some stuff from one of the previous conferences. And then
Uh-huh.
somewhere in there, I got an email about, and then I signed up for the remote pass for the last conference. And then because I was on that email list, I think somehow Jonah got in contact with me or mass emailed whatever about Signpost. And I think I was one of the first people to, to bring the Clarion energy into the group.
Fabulous. Great.
So I think that's how that's
Well, that sounds great. Now we can focus on Jonah. Lovely.
All right, thank you for chatting and hanging out. So I realized as soon as I plug in the microphones, because we have microphones clipped on, what it's been doing is it's actually been turning off the I can't hear you guys anymore. So we're going to talk for a bit, and then I'm going to unplug the microphones and we'll be able to hear again. So I'm just going to plug it in for a moment. Hopefully it should work. I mean, okay. Okay, so I'm here with Johnny Cruz, and hopefully the audio is all working correctly and everything. And basically, Johnny introduced me to this system called objective personality 7 years ago now, in 2017.
Yeah.
And it's a really vast system and a really incredible system of personality typology. We're going to do a total introduction overview. We're going to limit all of it. How did you first find out about it?
I've been curious about personality types since I first met Jonah. My first meeting of Jonah, he typed me as an ENFP or something like that, and I'm curious about how I manifest and interact in the world, and really delving into that for more self-understanding. And part of the reason why I got into human design is kind of to understand how the mechanics I use to interact with the world. And so OPS was a way for me to, or objective personality system
Yeah.
is a way for me to delve deeper into that and really see what makes me tick and why I may procrastinate or do things the way I do, and also to better understand people around me.
Now, was that the first personality system you learned about?
No, in classic college, it's, the ocean, openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, neuroticism.
Is that the big five?
Agreeableness. Yeah, that's the big five. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's also, I guess, Myers-Briggs, classic Myers-Briggs.
And classic Myers-Briggs, which is what you introduced to me in depth.
And then did you look into Enneagram, or is that something that's...
Well, when I met you, like I said, you got me to personality types, Myers-Briggs, and then Jungian typology. And then from there, you were always interested in many esoteric things. So Enneagram and astrology were things that you introduced me to in a in-depth way. And so Enneagram as well came with Myers-Briggs. where I found out I was
Yeah.
a 7.
I think what we'll find when we look into the interesting complement between our personalities is that we have such a opposite. There is a really nice division of labor. There's something where I think also in human design we find division of labor is not bad. Division of labor is clean. It's clear. It's actually a problem when someone tries to do everything, when the tribal tries to be the whole chart, or when the collective tries to be the everything, or that's really the problem. And so you don't really have problems when the life force energies are all functioning according to how they're supposed to function. But what's interesting is personality type, it really is, it would be the holy grail if you could find where it is in the human design body graph. But I really don't think you can, because you have virtually identical body graphs. I say virtually because things like the base of the moon are different, or the color of the moon, or tone of the moon. But very, very similar body graphs in cases of different personalities. Now, interestingly, this only happens with non-identical twins. There were 41 cases of identical twins documented who all had the same personality type. And this was by the founder of Cognitive Type, which is its own personality typology system. So I would just like to say, from the perspective of human design, I like personality typology because so many people in the world of personality typology are struggling for, how do I make decisions? Tell me the right way to make decisions, and so on. And we know in human design, that's the desperation of tell me what to do, which really human design is bringing us back to ourselves, where it's kind of the inability for anyone to ever tell you what to do. Only your inner authority can tell you that. And personality type has a lot of people who are drawn to it because they want to know what to do, and they're really struggling from that. And in fact, some of them come from personality type into human design, because it really is that next step in that way. So it is kind of a neighbor of human design. But human design is not a personality type system. Even rave psychology is not a personality type system. You can make your own micro typologies out of the colors. For instance, Ra talks about the personality color of line 5 and says that because line 5 is so auditory, you could look at the 6 colors as 6 different fundamental qualities of voice, or even more so, the 6 design colors in their combination with the 6 personality colors, making 12 possible combination of colors. And you could look at these 12 quote unquote color profiles, and you could actually see that there are 12 different kinds of 5-1 out there. Or actually, sorry, there are 11 kinds of 5-1, and then the last is the 5-2. So there are 12 different kinds of fifth line personality. And each one has a different quality of voice, and each one has a different way of talking, a different cadence, and a different certain fundamental things. So you can see that there are aspects in human design of the study of the personality, but it's the study of the personality construct in the aura. And so if we really look at the design, we're looking at what are the mechanics of the aura and how the energy of the aura works, how it interacts with other people, how it interacts with the transits, and basically what chemical cocktails it's producing, what oxytocin it's producing, what serotonin, or what endorphins, or what adrenaline, or what any of these things are. And that's the mechanics. But the personality is this totally other thing, right? It really is. It's this thing that's the passenger experiencing the mechanics. So yeah, it's been interesting. We've bonded over shared interest in human psychology and human personality type long before human design, but all of those things have been a source of interest. You're a cross of consciousness, a 2-5, and naturally inquisitive, curious when in the innocence, right? I always can tell innocence people are really happy if and doing well if they're curious about things, because that innocence is like excited to observe something new and not necessarily driven by the agenda for anything other than innocent curiosity. So in any case, yeah, I'm really excited today. So we're going to be presenting on the animals. And I think just keep in mind as we're talking about them that these are not things that you can find in the human design body graph. I am pretty content after a lot of research, right, that you don't find the personality in the body graph. You find the personality activations in the body graph. But the personality crystal, which is kind of the passenger experiencing it, yes, it's been imprinted, it's been colored, it's hooking into a personality construct. Like you hook into a personality construct of a cross of consciousness. So you get to hook into this
incredibly inquisitive personality. But the passenger that is experiencing that still has an Enneagram type, still has, you know, an objective personality type and some of these things. And they really are their own layers. And I don't think we can find those layers in the body graph, nor would we want to. So it's nice to learn these other layers, because these are layers of things that we don't need to explain with human design. Because people can use human design to try to explain why they had a bad relationship or why they got food poisoning or something. You know, you don't need to use human design in that way, right? Yeah. Human design can be used to explain the mechanics of the life force energy and how it operates and how it's meant to operate, and how people can find their true, what is really truly the great gift of life, their signature in life, their success in life, their satisfaction and peace and surprise. That's what human design is for eliminating the resistance that will then allow you to experience that chemical cocktail, which is the potential of your form to produce the healthy chemicals. But, you know, if you have an undefined root and your form is just producing cortisol all the time and you're just pumping stress into yourself all the time, it's not gonna work. It's not good. Or if you have a defined root and you're not following its mechanic, because there's going to be a mechanic of response or a mechanic of invitation to use that fuel. So human design is really telling you how your form operates, and personality type is really telling you, here's something that only really you, it's like already we're in the world of Hall of Mirrors. Only really you can actually say what what your personality type is, because there's no birth time or birth date that would tell you your personality type. So because of that, you're already in the subjective Hall of Mirrors, where simultaneously you're the greatest and the worst authority, because you're the closest to yourself, so you have the most biases. People often type themselves completely upside down. And one thing you might want to look at is the mirror image of the way that you've self-typed. And at the same time, you are the ultimate authority on your type, because you are the
experiencer of your,
you're the passenger.
You're the
It
passenger.
doesn't get more, authoritative than that ultimately in your experience of what it is to be in that form, and how your personality interacts and so on. So, okay. Well, with that preamble, thank you for being a guest. And how was your personality? This was maybe 2017. What was going on at that time?
2017. What was going on in that time is me and Jonah had a disagreement of my own personality, and this comes back to the idea of I experience myself, but I also experience the most biases or form the most biases because I am myself. So I have blind spots of myself. And so Jonah had, and who he judged who I was is different than how I see myself. And so this wanting to find some common ground was how I found objective personality type, because first there's only 16 Myers-Briggs types, whereas objective personality breaks that down into 512. So it adds more nuance. And I thought maybe searching in this nuance, we could find some common ground. And we have come to some common ground via objective personality type. I still don't agree 100% with his opinion of me.
92%.
We agree at we have 80% agreement on how I experience myself and how he sees me experience myself.
Yeah, so, and I've had that as well. And I mean, there's almost like if there's a Hippocratic oath of the doctor to never do harm, and if they're ever needed, on an airplane to always come to aid, there's almost an oath of the typologist to not tell people they're wrong about their self-typing. And I'm sorry for having broken that oath. It's only a sign of our friendship.
It's fine, you're entitled to your opinion.
Typologist, because
I could always get a second opinion from a different doctor.
I made a policy not to tell those people in that regard. I'm gonna make sure that this camera. Okay, yeah, it seems to be working all right. Okay, so the fundamentals of objective personality, and it's a really, really vast system, but the fundamentals are, it was formed by husband and wife duo Dave Powers, Shannon Renee, Portland, Oregon, in the mid 2000s. Really, they probably started in the early 2000s and then presented it to the world in 2017. And you were right there from the beginning. And we'll even see, based on your particular animal stack, a term that they use. Oh, okay. Based on your particular animal stack, that you actually are really keeping up with cutting edge things. And so one of the things that they discovered, and they really had all different ways of they kind of have different stories of how we were observing primate psychology and we were using this and that. But they really discovered these fundamental dichotomies, and they discovered their own fourfold dichotomy or separation. And it's the separation of different animals, what they call animals. Now, did they ever say why they call it animals?
Because they're saying that they call it animals because it's universal to like all mammals. You know, talk going back to the chimpanzees and
Yeah, it's
these four
like,
different styles of animals can be seen in different extents in different people.
yeah, it's almost like if some animals, if we think of real life mammals, exemplify one or the other of these qualities very strongly, or some within the tribe, like some primates within the tribe have more or less of these qualities. And then also, well, I mean, it just seems like these are like four fundamental activities. So what are the four animals?
So the four animals are sleep, play, consume, blast.
Yeah.
And what distinguishes all these animals is the interaction between observations and deciding. So deciding functions or the judging functions.
We don't have to go too deep into all that. Because,
Yeah.
well, the whole point is, okay, but let's just start with that. So four animals, each one of these has something to do with how you see in the world and how you make decisions and so on. Sounds, I mean, in human design, we know that we ultimately make decisions with our strategy and authority.
Yeah.
But this is a little bit more like the way I've heard it described by Dario Nardi, who's a typologist, is process management versus the executive function of, I guess there's two forms of executive functions. One is like process management, which is kind of observing, keeping track of things. And then the other is the feedback loop of doing things to sort of guide or direct. So it's kind of like you're driving and you're observing that the road is turning, and then you kind of, there's the feedback loop. So really these two cognitive processes work together all the time. Now, what they found though, let's just start with the four animals. And I really want to just teach this fundamental aspect, and then I want to look at it through the lens of human design, because it's really an exciting and interesting thing. So the first thing they found is that everybody has one dominant animal. So let's just start there. Your dominant animal
is probably play.
Probably play. We have looked at consume and play as both possibilities because they're so close. Consume is definitely secondary if play is primary, and vice versa. I think play as well, and the reason is a little bit more complex, and it has to do with just things I've observed. But just starting at a very basic level, how would you describe being play dominant? I mean, what are some of the things?
Play dominant is very adaptable. It works in the now, banter. You taking options, present moment observations, and then externalizing immediately with them. And so think of play. You have kids in the playground, they're hopping around, they're playing in the now, you know, and it's a very active state and very extroverted in some sense.
Right. And play can plug into either consume or blast. It can't plug into its opposite, sleep. So the cool thing about this diagram, this basic fundamental like laws of nature diagram they found, is that it perfectly follows the human design base configuration. So the first observation I just have from a human design lens is that the base configuration says every base in the four corners of the square can access three bases. It can access the one in the middle, and it can access the one on either side, but it can't access the one across from it. It basically can't access its opposite, only secondarily through the other bases. And it's the same thing here, where if you're looking at being a lead play person and what it is to have such a strong play animal. And are we good on the sound and everything?
It sounds great. You guys are just, you can't, you're too far apart from each other.
Okay.
Both of you can't be in a
You're definitely play, Christine. Yeah, I see your comment there. You're absolutely play, 100%. And just actually one thing you can do also is if you right click and do spotlight or showcase for everyone, it'll make it full screen. I don't know if that helps, but if you're back in that other screen, you can. Thank you to Rachel for being our tech today. So Rachel, the chillest ray of light. Okay, so looking at lead play, these are people who are not afraid to use energy. Johnny is willing to use energy. He is willing to expend a lot of energy in order to get things done, and really it's very adaptable. Now its opposite is sleep. And if you think of play as the fully out there in the world, fully existing in the world, fully observing and being in the world, sleep is not just literal sleep of closing your eyes. It's like how would you describe sleep?
It's like ruminating. It could be dissociating and sifting through your thoughts and trying to reorganize your day or something like that. Sleep is very an internal process. It's a completely internal process. And so I can't play and also ruminate at the same time. Play is very like taking up too much brain to actually be, oh, let me, compartmentalize and deal with this emotional struggle I'm dealing with while playing. You can't. So play is like escaping from the deep ruminations,
We just saw this great movie. What was it called? I guess you were in Seattle, so you missed it. But I was with Rachel, and you can say hi if you want to say hi on screen for a second. It's kind of weird, but there it is. There she is. But anyway, what was the movie called? It was like a few weeks ago. It was this great black and white. It was basically this. It was Double Indemnity.
Oh,
and Double Indemnity. There was so much play consumed that. Play and consume together. We'll go into consume next, but mostly play. But it was just like such an exquisite writing that it's very different from a very internal sleep performance, which might be like Al Pacino in The Godfather 2, where there's these long shots of him like in his own head thinking deeply about it. So, but just starting already with this first dichotomy, like imagine the extremes, the extreme of the most extroverted to the most introverted. Well, these people could be born mere moments apart with the same body graph. And that's what I want to add about the human design lens, is that this is the challenge, because so many people try to reduce it to something in the body graph, but it's not. And it's actually more challenging that way, and it's a good challenge, because the challenge is to imagine the mechanics of the body graph and not to taint them, because it is a sort of tainting with different personalities we've met. Because we've all met some pretty hideous personalities. And you don't want to hold it against somebody because they have that channel. And you say, oh, I know 35, 36s, y'all are sex crazy freaks or something like that.
Yeah.
Right? It's not true. I know a 35, 36 has been married for 40 years, childhood sweetheart. I mean, you find you can't, the same, in the two people with the exact same body graph, it's like, do all the people who were born around the time of Jeffrey Dahmer, are they all
killers? No.
Because they have not at all. And the different life trajectories that people take, and the different combinations of nature and nurture, the different combination of aura mechanics, and so on, that lead people into their lives, as well as, yes, the development of the personality as a passenger and its ability to experience the mechanics and not interfere with them. It's a really profound thing. So that's what human design is really giving us. And this is an exercise in overcoming the bias. So you can have somebody like me with a 2946. Now you might imagine 2946 lead play. You might imagine that's a very playful energy. Okay, well, I happen to be lead, and actually Richard Corbett is lead play. We were just talking about that. He is absolutely lead play. So he's a play blast person, and he loves the play of the energy of the banter and the excitement and all of it. And I might seem like a play person because you would say, well, I have the same, I'm gate 46, line 5, and so on. I'm just going to say my humble advice is to not look anywhere in the body graph for explanations for why somebody would be play or sleep or make any sort of guesses, because actually I happen to be lead sleep. So maybe we'll talk about sleep next, and then we'll do the other dynamic.
Sure.
So again, sleep is really, it's everything internal. I mean, it's everything from ruminations and nightmares to fantasies to obsessions to all of the things that can happen in the internal world, from having a breakdown and a hypochondriac experience all the way to the most exalted and divine, imaginations and inner worlds and all of these things. I mean, sleep contains the vast repository of the inner world, whether it's through the mind or in its memory banks or through the imaginative function. So sleep is third for you. It's the interesting thing is you start to see that even though Johnny is play can't plug into sleep. They're opposites. But sleep can still be third. It's not that sleep has to be opposite, like fully. It's like you have 4 positions. It's called the animal stack, right? And these 4 positions that the animals are in, that final 4th position doesn't have to be the opposite of the first. the opposite of the first can be the third or the fourth. So there's these interesting rules. And basically, I just want people to kind of imagine what their first lead function is for now, and then we can kind of move on.
Yeah.
So what would you say the biggest difference is play versus your sleep? Because you have both. You go into both.
For me, sleep is meditating. Sleep is distilling my experiences and, you know, somehow gaining some insight from them, like thinking about them internally.
You process them.
And process them, like fiddling with this Rubik's cube in my head of my experiences and trying to solve it. Whereas when you're playing, you don't really have the brain capacity to do that while you're experiencing and interacting in the world, you know. But if you're, you know, waiting in an elevator or you're sitting on the subway and you have time to just think to yourself, that's a perfect time to sleep and really like meddle with your thoughts and try to organize them and make them useful for you in the future and learn more about yourself through those experiences.
Yeah, right. So there's really a difference too, having sleep third versus having sleep fourth, or, you know, in any position.
Yeah,
there's going to be a pretty big difference.
I will say OPS kind of does what human design does, and human design will say you are here to learn from your undefined centers. And how OPS does that with the animal stack is your fourth animal in the stack is called your demon, and your life purpose is to learn from your demon function, your demon animal, to gain mastery over your life. So my demon animal is blast, which is what I'm doing right now. We'll get to that later.
Sure.
But me mastering my demon makes me well-rounded and helps me grow. Is in terms of human design, mastering your undefined centers is the same way.
You can look at it as mastering, but you can also, I mean, that's one metaphor, one paradigm. I don't really use the term, we use the term wisdom a lot. So
wisdom, not mastering.
Well,
wisdom.
yeah, but I mean, but mastery does have. I mean, we talk about like the fourth color and its relation to mastery and things like that. But as far as the wisdom of the openness, and I do think that the objective personality system, because they don't have something like human design, they do have a nice Jungian approach to, look, we're all going to have what they call tidal waves, which are basically getting triggered into the grip of your inferior, your demon animal.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of get stuck in that. But at the same time, there's mastery, but there's also, it's not like you're becoming some ubermensch. It's like you're really just realizing when you're really stressed out, it's because you haven't done this thing that is actually important to you. So give it like one day a week or a couple of days a week or something like that. But it's just interesting to see the relationship. I always say it's the slowing down. They don't really talk about that as much because they're a little more fast and snappy and kind of keeping in their dominant. You can really see when people are staying in their preferred animals versus when they're willing to go into their other animals, because we all have all four. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go into the other ones, you go into a very slow, almost hypnagogic state, like a hypnotic state. Like the way Ra would often talk would be a very hypnotic,
like flow state,
relaxed. Yeah. And these different brainwave frequencies that you can enter into to be in a different state of brainwave, whether it's flow state or whether it's just beta, theta, different frequencies, things like that. That's really, that's something also that I do believe has to do with the cognitive processes and cognitive functioning. So it is almost like how the personality interacts with the activations in the body graph. It's an interesting thing. Like we only really have one word for it, personality, but really it's the personality crystal, the personality of the personality crystal, if we will, that then interacts with the body graph that contains both personality and design activations. And that interaction is really as a passenger to experience it. And, nevertheless, it can experience it in a way that it is in a cognitive function that is processing everything in a heightened, or be triggered into different states. I mean, what's so interesting is when you learn about the animals, you start to realize that, like as you brought up, this fourth animal is such a crucial point. And so if you're play, we know that the fourth animal can be any of the other three. And that's another cool thing because of the way the juxtaposition works. The second animal can't be sleep. We know that because play can't plug into sleep. Other than that, that's the only rule. That is the only rule. And you can generate the matrices of which are the possible. And these are some of the personality types that they discovered. So we started with play. Now this is an energy type, just like we have energy types. For us, it's manifestors and generators and manifesting generators. But this they call it an energy. That play and sleep are both energy. And play is willing to spend that energy and be out there in the world. And we have sleep that's withdrawn and not willing to spend the energy as much, but it's more looking inward. Or it is spending energy, but it's spending internal processing energy to kind of digest things. And so we have that as the basic dichotomy. They're both about energy. How do we use energy? So you're a play dominant person, I'm a sleep dominant person. We get along really well because both of us want to get together and do something. And if we're not doing something, we're either in the activity or the rest. The activity or the rest. We're either enjoying getting it done or enjoying the rest of it. And we might not talk for an hour. We can sit next to each other and play video games or program or do some activity and not actually have a conversation. And we can then we can rest after and not actually have a conversation. And the ability to not have a conversation is something that the energy leads play and sleep.
Yeah.
So I'm lead sleep, you're lead play. Okay, now we're going to move on to blast and consume. So that's the other dichotomy, consume and blast. I guess we can do consume next. Now, how would you explain consume?
Well, blast and consume are considered information animals, whereas like we were saying, sleep and play, energy animals, information animals, consuming information and sending out information. And so consume is about consuming media, information, consuming the world, the information around you. And we each have our own unique fingerprint in how we consume, so much so that algorithms are based on our consumption of media. And so consume is, for me, since consume is second for me, I have a very wide base of consumption. For instance, my Spotify, I follow over 2,000 different Spotify artists. I have such a wide swath of things I would consume that it's like, an ocean wide, inch deep versus someone who's low consume, probably only listens to 4 or 5 artists, but they know their whole album and they have it known so well. Whereas me, I consume.
Our example of really low consuming extreme would be James Alexander.
James Alexander,
because he's such a strong blaster. Whereas for me, I have blast secondary and consume third, right? So in my animal stack, it's as if I have like less tension between the two, less extreme between the two. I'm a sleep person. And then for me, yeah, I can blast. And I also have consume. Consume isn't so well developed for me. That's okay, though. I have this ability to do it. But then for some people, it's going to be very extreme. So James is kind of our example because we've noticed that, he's so good at blasting, being a lead blast, that with his consume, he doesn't necessarily I'll try to get him to watch movies. He's very discriminating tastes. Not my kind of movie. No, I can't. I don't want to consume this. I don't want to consume this. I don't want to consume this. Whereas Johnny, I can be like, okay, here's this really weird thing. People say it's terrible. Let's check it out. And he'll be like, let's see what it is. Like you're willing to consume out of this willingness for something new and different. And so I guess you could say, is it fair to say that consume is gathering new and that blast is delivering or reciting old?
It's like regurgitating, old.
Regurgitating is the way you say it. Okay. So what I'm doing, I regurgitate.
Yeah.
I mean, you have blast also, it's your fourth function. So you just prefer not to regurgitate.
Yeah.
I have to twist you around. I have to be like, come on, Johnny, tell me about it.
Well, for me, it's like, if I do blast, it's like, am I giving enough context for my blast? Do I have to then build out this framework of basic foundational knowledge to then blast so that the person can consume when I'm blasting? Otherwise, I can blast, but they can't digest the food I'm blasting at them, or so they can't consume it.
It was a good example tonight because today just happened to have a day where there's like no stress and we're just relaxed and it's nice and there's light out and you kind of basically just kind of came out organically, and that was a perfect time to blast.
Yeah.
Because here's a no pressure situation. But if you have a speech to give at the opening of an event and you have to write it and prepare it and you have to blast it out, and, right, that's going to be something that, not that you won't do it or that you can't do it. I mean, we can all do all of the animals. It's just that's not your normal mode. Like, you gotta twist your arm to do it. Like, you'll do it if you have to twist the arm, but we all have to be twisted our arm to do something, right? So some people they're missing play. Some people are missing sleep, right? Some people, and so on. So, okay, so now we're on to consume and blast. These are the information animals. And if your lead consume, Mike is our dear lead consume archetype for the day. And he consumes so much interesting stuff. And he doesn't necessarily tell anybody about it. And I won't necessarily find out about it. I have to kind of get the secrets out of him, but he'll show me like his music collection or things that are just interesting that are really, I enjoy them. I have consumed third. So, again, it's not extremely well developed for me. It's not like I'm this massive consumer. Somebody might say, well, you have all these books, Jonah. Well, yeah, but the amount that I actually read, no, I mean, I do read them because I read very quickly, but a consume person reads to enjoy. And my amount of reading novels and luxuriating in the words and things like that. See, I have consumed third, and your third function is kind of your third animal here is kind of in this interesting, it's this hobby animals. It's something you enjoy to do. So I actually do enjoy to read, maybe even more than a lead consume person, although a lot of lead consume people read very, very much. And then you find blast people who read a lot too. So you can't really generalize on the behavior, but the way they're using it and what they're using it for. The blast person is reading so that they can then share what they've read with others. So I have blast second. And as a blast person, my personality is here to essentially sleep, reflect, think about what's important to me, think about my values, reflect on things. It's actually a very clean passenger consciousness now that I have human design. Before, my personality would get so distorted by the undefined head and ajna, thinking about things that don't matter and all this stuff, trying to solve things, trying to know things. Now I just let the mysteries be the mysteries. I let the unsolved questions be the unsolved questions. I let somebody else solve that. And my experience, though, as a personality is this very clean experience of basically when I go into sleep, the dominant animal is coming up for air. It's just coming up for air. It's just like huge, deep breath of air. And I feel so good getting that deep breath of air. I mean, I guess I'm mountains environments. I'm not supposed to love oxygen. But despite that, I feel really good getting that deep breath of air, going into my sleep. And sometimes it literally is breathing. Sometimes it literally is doing yoga nidra. And it literally is doing these certain practices that get me into a very conserving energy mode of reflective, introspective. So basically, if you have sleep in the first, second, or third position, this will be very familiar to you. If it is in your fourth position, you will instead have this kind of distorted version of sleep where you are, your sleep is a little bit attacks you or something, right? Like you're attacked by reverie and you're attacked by nostalgia, something like that. But in my case, it's first. So I have sleep first. So then my experience is secondary blast. And blast is essentially being able to describe and blast out information, right? It's actually in rock climbing, they say no spraying because spraying is trying to explain to the other person how to climb. No, go to the left, go to the right, go to the top, and they say no spraying, no spraying. And those are probably blast people. So you can say to me, Jonah, stop spraying. Jonah, you're just, because that's blast. It's the willingness to narrate and articulate and discuss and so on. And you might say, well, you have gate 12, that's articulation. Sure. It's different than somebody who blasts who has gate 22. They're a graceful blaster. I'm an articulate blaster, whatever it is, right? There's these different personalities that the blast plugs into. So that's why I want us to see this from the human design perspective of this is not in the body graph. There are blast people that are born moments apart with the same body graph, right? So I have this body graph. I'm born very close to Donald Glover. We have like opposite animal stacks. Right? So the animal is something that is just you can reflect on for yourself. Really think about for yourself, what is your animal? What is your dominant animal? So my dominant animal is sleep, my secondary is blast. Your dominant animal is play, your secondary is consume. How perfect is that as a division of labor?
Right.
And it works really well. And we do work really well together. So how would you describe some of our differences in approaches then, being play consume versus me being sleep blast? Like we're both energy type, or we're energy dominant, so we have a commonality there.
Yeah.
My first thing to do if I really am going to take something on, I notice something needs to be done, and you're like, okay, Jonah, let's do this. sacral decision. Then I
Yeah.
begin to sleep on it and ruminate on it and think about it. If I'm it's not, that process doesn't even start. So the decision-making process. Now for you, it's like, Jonah, do you want to do this? Your play begins to play with it, to just do it in different ways, to start to move things around and try it out. And like, oh yeah, let's move the couch, let's move it here. I want to draw a diagram of how the room could be and do the feng shui of it and see the meaning and the symbolism of each place. And you just like start moving things around because you're observing. You have a really quick feedback loop.
It's an active process.
You're observing externally, followed by taking action and executive decision to change something externally. Because play can do that. I'm observing internally, followed by taking executive action internally to reprioritize or shift or adjust my plan. So I have this internal thing I'm working on, this internal vision, this internal plan, this internal world that I'm sleeping on. You do too. It's the third thing you do, right? It's the third thing for you. So it's just something that you do sometimes. So you're not doing it all the time. But for me, I'm just doing this all the time. I'm always kind of planning, plotting, thinking, ruminating, fantasizing, imagining, forecasting. You might say, Jonah, that's so mental. No, it's so internal. You can be mental and external too, or
exactly,
or whatever. But it's not about being mental, it's about being internal. So there is this very internal state. Okay, so I'm dominant sleep, you're dominant play. So the first thing you do, observe it outside, then change the outside, feedback loop.
Yes.
I observe internally, then change something internally. Like, oh, I'm not really in the mood to do this anymore. What else could I do? Let me find something else to do. And look through my internal catalog of memories and find the perfect thing. Or let's see what to pull off the shelf kind of internally. And it's a really interesting, different process, this sleep versus play. Now, your secondary processes are also opposite, yours and mine.
Yeah, so I'd like to see, so I'm play consume, and I would say it's kind of like a cat playing with its food before it consumes it. You play with it, understand the requirements and dynamic of the thing you're playing with, and so you can better consume it. And so it's a very active process of pushing the buttons and seeing what those buttons do and learning from the reaction from the environment.
I always say that the difference between the orders, because there's also going to be consume play people, right? And so that's the different order. It's like very slightly different. But the difference between the order is really that the first one, the dominant one, is forcing the second one to do its bidding. So the play is this like totally like maniacal, crazy, pushing all the buttons, as you say. And it's not a third line thing, you're at K5. It's not about that. It's just the play wants to experiment and see what it's like and see what happens. And then what happens secondarily, it's like the consume is like learning just enough to keep playing. It's like learning just enough to keep playing. The other way around is somebody who really wants to consume. And what it really is to really want to consume, and you actually do have a huge appetite for consume too. So it's not that the second can't be a large appetite. I mean, you will read manga, so many episodes of manga, and you will watch so many episodes of videos, so much content. I guess it's more just something about you do go into both modes. When you're done playing, you go into consuming, you're done consuming, you go into play. The reason I think your lead play is that I just think that's ultimately more the point for you. You're ultimately more excited about the possibilities of play. And my reason for that has to do with temperament, and that's, with being an intuitive feeler and things like that. And that doesn't really necessarily, that's a different level, a different layer. But I have reasons for believing that. But anyway, it is very subtle because your first two, you can kind of switch between them. I mean, I can blast for like about 2 hours, then my blast starts to just, that starts to turn off. Even with breaks, it's like, I'm not a.
You can monologue though. I can't monologue. You can go on at length. Whereas for me, it needs to be pulled out of me. You need to ask a question that I have enough context to then give you a sufficient answer. But I'm not going to go ad infinitum. On topic.
Yeah, it's different. Well, it's also we have different approaches in other ways too. There's so many different subtleties of the objective personality system, or OPS as it's called. So I love looking at OPS from the lens of HDS. It's definitely it's interesting to see what's not in the body graph, the same way that the Enneagram is not in the body graph. Not really. Although there are cool similarities, and it's like the Maya is reused. I mean, with the Enneagram, you see the triad, and that's like the spleen, ajna, and the solar plexus, the physical, the mental, and emotional.
Mhm.
You have that same breakdown in the Enneagram, the same fundamental division. In objective personality, you have the same 64 divisions of each of the Jungian types, which themselves are based on this beautiful fundamental division. So you 64 hexagrams, everything. I mean, it's all a dividing sequence. Yes, there's 512, but that's because the 64 is there's 8 64s, which is again another mystical way of breaking it down, and that is how it's arrived at in objective personality. So I just want to give everyone, and thank you so much for listening and the comment. But yeah, you need to be asked. Yeah, you might be play consume or play blast. Probably you might have missing sleep. To talk about what it is to have each animal missing might be interesting.
Yeah,
because that can be kind of the one that it can be hard to tell sometimes. But I guess I'll just say thanks everyone for kind of coming with this journey. We're going to keep going on it. But I just want to. I just want to kind of make sure that we have practical something you can try at home, like guess what your first animal is, and then maybe after that, instead of going to your second, you could go to your second, but you can also just guess what your last one is, because that might be the other most valuable thing. And then you figure out the ones in the middle and which ones higher or lower. But we kind of do this first, last zigzag.
Yeah, well, we can talk really quickly about demon blast, demon consume, demon sleep,
yeah, let's do that.
Demon
let's do
play.
That. So you talked a little bit about demon blast already. That was a good place to start. So normal blasting is kind of, I have secondary blast. So that's kind of like decent blast, explaining things, talking about things, teaching things. Okay.
First off, a nightmare for demon blast is you have a day to write a 10-page paper.
Okay.
That's a lot of blasting, 10 pages. How am I supposed to fill this up? How am I going to organize all my thoughts? What do I'm trying to explain? That's a nightmare for me. In college, I did really well in tests, but when it came to long-term papers, anxiety, nightmare. So that's demon blast.
Yeah, and I think if we break down blast, I won't go into the nitty gritty of it because this is just an introduction to OPS. But if we break it down, it's one process manager internal function that's basically managing an internal process, and then it's one external interfacing function that is connecting with other people, either at an emotional level or at a more intellectual level. And either way, you're kind of connecting with them, and you're trying to connect with them and make sense to them and explain things in a way that they understand intellectually, or a way that speaks to their heart and really has a deep emotional connection. So either way, you're interfacing with them. And so because of that, blast has these two components of kind of like this internal process manager of here's my point that I'm trying to make, and then this external, I'm going to connect to the other person. And so even when I'm doing signpost radio and kind of filling in and doing these, open radios these days, I just kind of have something to blast about, and I talk about it. If people have comments, I will blast about that. And it's basically just like, let's blast about this, blast about that, because ultimately the blast is not that expensive to me. It's more expensive to me than if it were the first. It's not my lead. I'm not lead blast. I'm not, right? People can mix it up and say, well, you seem to be lead blast. Well, people don't really seem to be lead sleep because sleep is so invisible. I mean, what is the seeming to be lead sleep? Staring off into the distance and zoning out. Jonah, you're obviously lead sleep. You're just staring into the distance. But I see you do that too. Everybody gets a 1,000-yard stare every once in a while. So it's not really a good indicator. Being lead sleep, the way I am, is simply having a strong internal kind of need to go back to my comfort zone regularly. And yet, it's that my healthy process of actually developing and being healthier is slowing down and being more comfortable going out of blast even into consume and ultimately even into play, because I have this whole process of animals that I can't get to if I'm constantly in my sleep. So if my sleep is constantly internal, I can't connect to other people. So I have to go down and slow down and go into my consume to really connect with them. In the same way, you're not going to really be able to connect deeply to your inner world unless you light some candles and some incense and turn down the lights and make it really nice and kind of, there's like a slowing down to go into your lower animals. So now that we go through the 4, your demon blast you've described very well as this nightmare of the midterm exam.
Term paper. Something we have to explain a lot in a short amount.
Having to teach. And I've heard this terror of, what if I tell people the wrong thing as a missing blast, not wanting to give people the wrong information and having this paralysis of being afraid that they'll believe you and be led astray and you'll be responsible for something bad that happened, even though it was an innocent mistake.
Don't want to misinform.
Just an over conscientiousness. Whereas for me, I'm like, I'm like a magazine. I'm like, so last week I had 3 mistakes. Here's that, I'm like constantly rectifying my past mistakes and apologizing and so on. I also have 9 third lines in my chart.
How would you describe demon play having lead sleep?
So my demon play is another one that people are kind of surprised by, and they'll say, how can you demon play? You're so playful, this and that. But the difference is that when we hear play, we think like life of the party. Well, I love being the life of the party. We actually love going into those functions. I can't do that all the time. You really can be the life of the party at 10 a.m. over coffee at the, you can be convivial and go into that play readily. But for me, it's like a big event. It's a big event that I prepare for. I prepare to go into the play, and the play is also not just like the carnival side of life. The play is also just, it's going to be every random, chaotic, fully external thing where you're letting go completely of any internal tether. So it's almost like if I have an internal reminder system that's like, be responsible, be responsible, be responsible. And it has all these reminders of things to do. And I'm so afraid to let go of that internal reminder system, that tether of internality. Now, somebody who's missing sleep is the exact opposite. They're afraid to go fully internal and let go of that missing externality. So it's really healthy for them to practice yoga nidra, to practice, for those who don't know what that is, you kind of close your eyes and focus on each part of the body. You can listen on different, YouTube guided meditations where they take you on, now focus on your big toe, now feel your ankles relax, now go to your, you end up in your ears and all these places. Mm-hmm. And it's really nice because what it's doing, that's kind of more of a sensorial sleep. There's another side to sleep too, which is more the imaginative, intuitive side.
Yes.
But either way, it's getting you in touch with your body, your breathing, your heart rate. It's getting you in touch with your internal state, your thoughts, your internal narrative, your internal images. And I see you found it. So this is a link from Lucida. In a little bit, we open this up for discussion, and I still don't have the audio enabled. What is it? Mm-hmm. But we'll open that up soon. So, okay, so talking about the inferior blast or missing blast. I know it sounds bad to say inferior, but demon blast, this blast that attacks you out of the blue. It can also just be resistance to doing it, but then if you do it, it can be a relief. But then other times it can be a drag. I mean, it's like there's a whole mix of emotions, and then they call it a demon also because there can be attacks. There can be tidal waves, and these tidal waves, I guess, I know that the author Naomi Quank, she coined the term in the grip when she said, was that really me in the grip of the inferior function? And that's talking about being gripped by the inferior function of your type, very similar to this fourth animal, this demon animal. It kind of grips us. And you say, was that really me? So I would say the other thing would be, because you normally aren't in that blast, if you really had this weird phase of your life where maybe you bought a lot of clothing that's not your style, or who knows, you haven't really done that. But I mean, there could just be, I guess, well, that's not really blasting, but it is in some sense taking action. It's just, it's hard to synthesize what that would look like for you, what the grip of your blast would look like.
Yeah.
I guess it could be that maybe you finally do have a time where you're up really late and maybe you're kind of not normal, you're a little bit not normally yourself, and then you're blasting a lot and you're really going fully into that blast and you're allowing yourself to experience a lot of things, feel a lot of things you haven't felt, go into a lot of inner experiences you haven't gone into, because a big part of blast is referencing these internal experiences and being grounded in memory and the internal. So yeah, I would just say the missing functions, or the missing, I guess, animals in this case, the demon animals, they can attack in the sense of demon animals. It sounds like a
Pet Cemetery.
Yeah, exactly.
Part 4.
It's basically the attack of the thing that you haven't done that's not normal you, and then you're overwhelmed by it. So for me, that's play. That attack would be like a binge, where I would spend a lot of money and stay up late and party a lot and not really want to go back. It's like once I finally make it to play, I'm here. I don't want to go back to the rest of.
Well, what I see is, I feel like for you, demon play, and for me, demon blast. My demon blast, when I do it, it has to be very premeditated for me to feel comfortable.
Except for today.
Except for
it has to
today.
either be premeditated or the most easy thing in
Or the
world.
most easy
But it
thing.
can't be like.
And same
in
with
an
Jonah.
hour,
Jonah
let's do
needs
this.
to like premeditate, like set aside time to play, so he can then, you know, let his sleep off the hook and be like, okay, it's time to play. It's
Yeah.
time to play.
Yeah, like, okay,
It's
9
play
o'clock at
time.
night.
Where me, it's like it's any time to play. Like we
No,
could
that's
play
a
it
good
now
point.
or tomorrow. You know, there's no
There can be a little bit
worry
of
about that.
for
Yeah.
missing play, there can be a little bit of such a strong tether to the internal world.
Mhm.
There's a reluctance to really let loose. When people say like let loose, relax, what they really mean is let loose of your internal world. Let loose of your memories for a second. Let loose of that grip that you have on this internal
Mhm.
experience. And people who are missing play are unwilling to do that because they're a little bit, so they come across as a little bit uptight and a little bit, everyone tries to cover up and I shouldn't generalize, but most people try to cover up in the same way that there's the not self in human design, there's covering up the missing animal. So most people try to cover up. So the missing play people like me are like, no, I'm relaxed. I'm the most laid back person. Didn't you know I used to surf? I'm a skateboarder. You haven't seen my skateboard collection? I've never done those things. But you know, we don't even joke around usually because we usually, not that we don't have a sense of humor, it's just that we can sometimes miss jokes or take things too seriously, or there's a certain level of missing the banter. We really enjoy it. I love watching Double Indemnity and seeing all this great banter because I love the play, but that's the thing that I'm missing. And, you know, my personality loves the play. And so, you know, again, it's not in my human design chart. My personality will always love the play because it's what's so different from it. It's kind of like I'm always base 2. I'm always going to love base 1 because they're so different from me. That's not to say that base 1 people are play, right? There's going to be people that are of all different bases. You're base 2 like me, and you have play. So it's really just at this layer or level that is so valuable. So I guess the one we haven't looked at is missing consume. And I would say missing consume is people that you really have to twist their arm to get them to check out a new genre of music,
Yeah.
a movie. They're not like eager for something new. They're kind of like, this is a chore. I have to like learn something. Or it's almost, it can be
They
like
got like horse
elitist.
blinders. I think they're very like tunnel vision.
It can be very elitist. We have this friend Harry from Seattle. I don't think you mind me using him as an example.
No.
And he's a great poet, and he's you know, it's like it's kind of what you're missing is each one sounds like the best and the worst from different perspectives. So looking at Perry, he's an amazing poet, and he has an amazing collection of books. So what's the downside? Well, he doesn't like books that aren't in his extremely discriminating taste, and he has great taste. So I love his book collection. I can spend hours in his book collection. But he doesn't, I couldn't get him to like read a manga or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't get him to read something that's outside of his like erudite, sophisticated, selected, curated, organized, beloved book collection.
Yeah.
And he has a great book collection, and he's an amazing poet, and he has all these things. But and so then you'd say, like, okay, it seems like he has the best because he has sleep at his disposal, so he's deeply introspective. He has play at his disposal, so he's very funny and playful. Yeah, he has blast at his disposal, so he's this great teacher, and he can explain and teach, and he actually is a teacher, and he's taught me a lot personally. So, but so anyways, it's kind of an interesting thing. You're like, okay, how does this work? Which one's the worst to have? Well, they're all the worst, and none of them are the worst. It's kind of, that's the answer. It's like on one hand, like missing consume is like great. You don't have to deal with the crap of life or something.
Well, missing consume, you know, I kind of have a bias towards consume, but it's bad for, it's good, bad for everyone else. Like missing consume are people who he can watch The Office a billion times and not get tired of it, you know, because they consume the same information, and it's comforting to them that consume the same information, because consuming new information can be a little overwhelming because then they have to process that new information. And whereas for me, it's like I don't really process it all that much. And so demon consume is, you know, just going over the same thing over and over and being fine with that same peanut butter and jelly sandwich you've had your whole life without needing to try a new, you know, a new diet.
Yeah,
you know?
I see what you're saying. Yeah. So each one is kind of the best and worst. Like I'm missing play, so I kind of think it's the best to be missing play because I have sleep at my disposal and blast and consume. So I kind of get, you know, it's like we all get 3 out of 4, right? The thing that I'm giving up is my ability to be quick on my feet.
Yeah.
So you are very quick on your feet, very dexterous, but what you're giving up is your ability to explain things in depth. You can explain things over time in depth by slowing down and really taking your time with people, and they will actually go, wow, that's amazing how they'll actually be blown away because weirdly the in the same way that I can be really funny when I actually do get into play, like the the missing animal is this like freakishly idiot savant, like gifted, it can do some Rain Man stuff.
Yeah.
You just have to coax it. It's like the connection to the design, to the unconscious. So it'll get you in trouble, but it can also do this really cool stuff sometimes. So it's not that you can't blast, it's just that, like, I always remember our friend who was a teacher, a college teacher, was missing blast, and she would get asked, so what did Nietzsche mean when he said that the Apollonian and the Dionysian were this and that? She would go, that's a wonderful question. And I think that everyone should answer that question. I'm going to actually add that to the writing homework for this week. So I'd like you to all hear your thoughts on that fantastic question. And you'll all hear your thoughts next week. All of your thoughts. Okay, thank you. And she would like do this whole,
yeah,
this whole thing.
Socratic method. That's how I would.
Whereas our friend Perry, the poet, he would just go on a link if I asked him that. He would, 2 hours later, it would be like, because he had no problem with the blast, right? So the gift of gab, which is not to say that people with missing blast don't sometimes gab, because you can play and banter.
But they're not blowhards. I feel like missing blast.
No, I know you're saying something, Johnny. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So we've looked at the animals. We looked at the missing animals. I do want to hear everyone else's. I'm gonna actually maybe we'll disconnect the microphones.
Disconnect them.
And so okay. So yeah. So I'd love to. All right. So I'd love to read the comments, and then I can kind of. Hopefully the audio is still working. I just disconnected our special microphones. Now I can hear you, so everyone can comment through audio as well. So Lasita comments that she likes being introverted, introspective, and passive. So that's going to be qualities of sleep and consume, and that both of them are, consume is kind of half introverted, half extroverted. Sleep is fully introverted. Both are somewhat introspective, but sleep is more introspective, I would say. Yeah. It's like 2 ways of introspecting, and both are passive, so they have that commonality. The 2 active animals are play and blast. So they have that. So there's kind of different ways to slice it and different commonalities you might have. Hopefully the audio is still okay. I know we're outside now.
Yeah, which is probably why it would be terrifying for me to actually give a lecture in the conference. Because
so you must have blast.
Is probably my demon. Yeah.
Yeah, you must have blast forth. That's what it sounds like. That's what it sounds like. So, but see, the positive side of it is that means that you're very introspective and you're very comfortable going into sleep, which is a deeply introspective state. You're very comfortable consuming, which is listening and observing and noticing and gathering information, reading a lot, watching a lot, taking in. You're also very comfortable with play, which is, or at least, it could be first, second, or third, but it's still, you're somewhat comfortable with play. So you kind of get 3 out of 4. The blast is kind of like missing blast people. What I found is they can be the best teachers. And my missing blast friend, who's the college teacher, got the top ratings of all of the teachers.
Professor?
Yeah, all the top ratings. She got like 493 top 5-star reviews. Everyone loved her. Why? Because all the other teachers were blast people who lectured her ear off and talked their ear off. And she's the one who always had fun activities and group interactions and let other people talk and facilitated. It was very engaging. So actually, funny enough, even though your fear as someone missing blast might be that you're not the teacher, most teachers are blast. Students actually love the teachers that don't blast at them, because most people are going to be blasting at them. And so they actually get this really interactive. It might be harder to do on Zoom. I mean, she was doing it in real life with handouts. Play can be kinesthetic too. So she was giving people handouts and she was, interacting and engaging with them in different ways. It can be harder on Zoom, which kind of is more of a blast consume format. Take turns blasting, take turns consuming. It's harder to do a sleep play thing where you're all breaking off into small groups together to come up with an idea and present it back to each other, or things like that. You do a lot of really playful things.
So when I'm doing coaching, it's really best for me if the client is super talkative. So I don't have to do much of the talk.
Yeah, it's just a moment here. I'm just turning on speakerphone as well, so I get it louder. I got that a little bit, but now you're on speakerphone. I'm just going to look through some of the blast is clarion appropriate. So yeah, Christine, you might be play blast. That's something I definitely don't want to tell people what they are. You can look into that though. You very well might. So Monique was saying, how do we know which we are? Well, how would you answer that, Johnny?
The stack. For me, it's knowing it's easy to know what I'm not, and I know I'm not blast. And so starting from the demon can be helpful, because sometimes your talents, you're not even aware of your talents really, because you take it for granted. But I know what I struggle with, what brings me anxiety, what would give me a nightmare or something.
Yeah. Yeah, and I see as the comments as far as testing, objective personality doesn't really have this as much. So I would say the exercise would just be, start with your demon, like Johnny was saying, and start with what you're not. The other thing would be people tend to type themselves backwards. Not always, not always. I mean, you can really see all different varieties. So there's no hard and fast rule here. But you will find people like myself who are lead sleep who want to convince you that they're lead play, because they'll say, look, I'm the most laid back person in the world. So I think it would be helpful just to go over how each one tries to kind of convince.
Yeah.
I'm missing play. So I'm trying to convince people, hey, look, I know how to play. No big deal. I'm not actually mad that you poured that really expensive scotch into your cup of Coca-Cola and blasphemously drank this really expensive scotch like a heathen without appreciating it. Yeah. I'm not a control freak. It's okay.
I'm really cool, laid back.
Yeah. So that's the lead sleep person. Now, if we switch it,
demon sleep, someone who goes through a breakup and just brushes everything under the rug without processing it.
Sure. Yeah. Overly positive, overly optimistic about the future, not willing to dwell on the past at all, not willing to ruminate, not willing to process, not willing to digest, not willing to introspect, all of that. Yeah. And they're going to convince you that they're good at that. They're going to try to convince you how responsible they are, because a big part of sleep is being really responsible as well. So they're going to say, look, I'm a really responsible person and you can trust me. And I've introspected on this and thought deeply about it. It's like, are you sure you want the responsibility of this? And they're like, yeah. And then they, maybe haven't thought it through what that actually means. They get a dog they can't take care of, or they get
a car they borrow from a friend.
I was thinking of Sophia, actually. But anyway, so if you have friends who are missing sleep, the thing is, each type in some way can almost look like a superhuman. Missing sleep is kind of like, here's somebody who's really playful, present, engaging, active, exciting. Here's somebody who can blast. They're a great teacher. They're a great speaker. They can consume, they can listen. They're really sympathetic. What's the hang up? Well, the hang up is they're with someone for years and they walk out the door and break up and just start a new relationship. Maybe they're a fourth line or something, right? And that's fine, but the unwillingness to process or digest what happened in the past, even if you're a fourth line and you need to start a new relationship immediately, something like that, you still need to process and digest what happened. That's sleep. Everyone needs to do all four of these processes. For me, I'm missing play. Everyone needs to let loose and relax. So I need to let loose and relax every once in a while too. You're missing blast. Everyone needs to say what they know, even just kind of, it's almost like you call it regurgitating. Well, it can also be kind of nice. Like you might feel lighter after this. You've said a lot of things that you've got a lot of it out there. And it's kind of cool to do that. And so each of these has something that we have to do in some sense. Now, if you're missing consume, I think you're going to cover that up by trying to show what a good listener you are and go, like, I notice missing consume people go, yeah, and they think it's showing that they're a good listener, but it looks like they're a really impatient listener. They're not a good listener. I mean, it doesn't, maybe they are, but it doesn't look like they're a good listener, but they're trying to prove to you what a good listener they are, because it's hard for them to do it. So they're like,
and demon consume's they're not gonna ask more questions. They're not gonna ask more leading questions. So consume, I feel like lead consume is someone who's like pulling.
They're really good at asking a lot of questions. Yeah. And if you're missing consume, if that's your demon, that's going to be people that are hiding it. So starting here with this kind of like, which of these dichotomies is a strong dichotomy for me, that I love pulling questions out of people and I hate being in the spotlight. That's lead consume. You can be addicted to podcasts. You can be listening to radio all day long, listening to different stuff. You can be hooked on all the new variety, the smorgasbord of content until it gets old. I mean, we have to keep it interesting. I know that even on Signpost, we have the challenge of keeping the programming interesting, having new series, new guests, new speakers, new things. That's for consume, because consume wants something new. People who don't have high consume, they're happy with the same old thing. Right? Yeah. But consume is like, no, let's keep seeing what else is out there. So consume is all about that. Missing consume people, they're like, I consume so much. I will show you how much I know what is out there.
Yeah.
But actually, they're very narrow in their tastes, and they kind of grow by broadening their tastes. And then I guess missing blast, that's basically, how does that maybe pretend to be other than it is? Well, that can pretend in its own way too, because it can be like,
oh yeah, I'm totally willing to explain that. I'll explain it to you. Here, this is how you do it. And you're like, okay, but explain it. You're like, no, I just explained it. It's like, no, show me how. No, I just did. It's kind of like this unwillingness, like twist your arm to actually get a detail where you're kind of like, yeah, I'll show you how to do it. And then you just kind of don't want to go through the labor to go. But then when you actually do, you get to to discover that you actually have quite a talent there. It's a real hidden gift as well. I mean, when I actually get into play or improv or something, there's a real talent there. It's just hard to get into that. It's a big context switch. We're all in one context, and there's a massive switch of the context going into a totally different way of experiencing things. Where, yeah, when you're blasting, you're in a context mode where you're in a thought space that you're sharing with people and you're speaking out to them. When you're consuming, you're in that same thought space. You're listening and observing and even contributing to that same thought space through what you're doing. When you're sleeping, it's like each of these modes is a context, and one of them is going to be the most expensive for you to go into. When I'm deep in my sleep, I'm imagining all of these things, and then to have to go into play and like run to the store to get milk, because that can also be play, because it's like a random thing that's involved in kind of randomly being out there in the world. You can kind of sleep on the way to the store, and you can kind of, you know what I mean?
Like I sleep while on long runs, I go into sleep mode where I'm
and you actually consume,
process information.
And it's the same for me.
Long run.
I love long walks. I've seen people that are missing or lower sleep and consume. We're like, why would you walk? Just drive. And I'm like, because I like the long walk where I get to sleep. I don't have to pay attention so much to the other cars and things. I can go into this mode where I'm in this really ruminating, introspective mode. So if you are missing sleep, it's really healthy for you to go on a long walk once a week. It doesn't have to be every day, just go on a long walk once a week. If you're missing blast, explain something to somebody once a week. If you're missing consume, learn a new genre of music or a new genre of art or something is outside of your wheelhouse. And if you're missing play like me, do something to really disconnect from the internal world and get outside of your head everyone.
Do improv.
Or anything that gets outside of your head, because it's so easy to be in this headspace and internal, but you can't be in that headspace when you're playing basketball. You can't be, or doing improv. You can't be in your head when it's like, hey, think fast. You can't be in that headspace when you have to be in that play mode. So Christine comments that blast can be debilitating with no connection from her gate 62-1 to defined head ajna. Yeah, I'm sure there's all sorts of interesting combinations you can find, but I mean, people. So yeah, the correct system is objective personality, and I see this link. I'm looking at it right now. The objective personality tests. Oh, I guess there are tests. I didn't realize that this even existed. I would still say, I don't know if this is really it. This looks like something else. It's objectivepersonality.com
or system
or objective personality system.
Well, I think I got the wrong thing, but I put in objective personality.
And there's also a Facebook group that you can look into.
Yeah, it's really it's a whole deep system, and there's a lot of information, but I think just for now we just start with just the basics of, you have these 4 animals, you can notice them. There are 4 different kind of modes of cognition, ways of being. One of them is like breathing fresh air for you. It's so comfortable for you. For me, that's sleep. It's like, I get to go fully inside. I can fully turn off my need to monitor the outer world. I don't need to watch for traffic. I don't need to be driving and paying attention to that. I don't need to be talking and explaining. I can be fully in this sleep mode. And that's my breath of fresh air, that internal space. For Johnny, that same thing is a fully external space. Breath of fresh air. I get to just hang out with people and play games or have like an allocated amount of time, or just your life where you just get to like approach things. Well, you know what I mean? Like you're just kind of like, I guess for me it's to be an allocated that time. For you, it's just kind of the way you are, but you're just kind of, you don't have to get pulled into something else. Like the same way that I'm in sleep and I'm like, oh, now I have to go do a bunch of work. I have to get pulled out of sleep. I get to go back into my sleep mode when I go back to my desk, to my computer, and I'm deep in thought and so on. Or on a long walk or something like that. Now, for Johnny, that's going to be play. For someone who's lead consume, it's very comfortable for them to go back into a mix, an internal, external, half mix. But what that has in common is that it's basically fully how would you describe it? It's fully present.
Yeah,
No,
because
or
it
is
is
it-
present, because consume is taking outside observations in the now and using your internal feeling or a
Yeah.
logical way to process and consume.
I guess
them.
play
Yeah.
and consume are both present. Play is, I don't know how I describe it. There's like a distance to sleep and blast. They're kind of at a distance with people. So consume is, but then how is consume different from play? I guess it's the passive present rather than active present. So you can see that a lead play person is very active in the present. They're always thinking, what can I do in this present moment to make it more active and dynamic and spice it up? Let's play a game. Here's a new game nobody's played before. The consume person, on the other hand, they're more passively in the present. So they want to have an interesting present to watch, interesting cafe to be in. You know, they want to have an interesting music to listen to, an interesting movie to watch, an interesting thing to read, or an interesting podcast or a lecture to listen to. So the consume lead is most comfortable when they have something interesting that they can passively be present with. So if you are consume lead, then you're really comfortable when you can be passively present. When you're forced to be actively present, like play, like tease each other, joke around, and try to get a rise, and so on, you might not be as comfortable. Now, if your lead sleep, that's passively absent. I am most comfortable passively absent. It doesn't sound great. It's like, so what does Jonah do after he finds oh, he's passively absent for a few hours. He just goes into his passive absence where he doesn't really want to talk to people. He wants to go off into his own inner world, have his passive absence, and then sleep. And then blast is kind of active absence, which is a funny way to think of it. As I'm blasting and explaining information, that I'm absent, I'm not really present to the moment as much. I'm kind of talking about the information and the systems, and they have to be absent from the moment. But then I'm active. I'm actively doing something with that, actively searching through the data banks to kind of describe things, and that's what blast is. So I would just say, when you're looking at what's most comfortable for you, what's least comfortable. And I think that's a really good summary. We can wrap it up there if there are any more final questions, but otherwise I think that was a great intro. It's definitely a topic I'm always happy to discuss.
So I came up with a possibility for me. I put 1, the lead would be consume, number 2, sleep, 3, play, and 4, the demon would be blast. Does that sound right?
Really accurate to me. Yeah, that could very well be. That absolutely sounds accurate. And there's a lot of interesting fallouts from that. And if you go deeper into the system, you can see also that each of them has its own temperament. So you can prefer intuitive feeling, and then you can disprefer sensing or different functions. You know, in my case, I disprefer sensing and thinking, which sounds bad. It's like, Jonah, you disprefer thinking? What does that mean? But it just means that given the rationalistic thinking approach, I mean, feeling is rational too, but in a different way, I will always favor the more humanist feeling approach. And there is a dichotomy, there's a difference. Some people really are a little more on the thinking side. That being said, I have intuitive thinking second. So it allows me to do a lot of programming and a lot of things that require that intuitive thinking temperament. My blast is intuitive thinking. So I explain to people through a very intuitive thinking way. So that's a whole extra level that we won't go into, but it really, once you identify your animal stack or animal order, you can then learn more about each animal. And you can see even that at certain times of day, it's almost as if I've noticed, and this is kind of weird, I don't know why this would be, but it's almost like in the beginning of the day, when I'm starting work and first thing in the morning, it's my first animal, my second animal. And if I work throughout the day, I slowly get to my third and fourth animal. It's like I work all of the first animal out of my system, and then I can actually go into the other one, but I can't do it if I haven't worked it out of my system first.
Beginning of the day for me, I'm super sassy. Anyone around me, this playful aspect of
lead play,
yeah,
absolutely
sassy and giving everyone a razz. But as I get throughout the day, this time of day, I'm trying to sleep and really think about my thoughts and process what I've done so far.
And blast. I caught you in your blast.
Yeah.
We should have like the midnight blasting hour. It'll be Johnny and Lucida can have a midnight. At the end of the day, you just blast everything. Just you take turns just talking for 10 minutes straight. That's what it was.
So I'll be asleep by midnight. Sorry.
Okay.
But even, as a last person, you can practice just talking into the video yourself, or I don't know, it sounds so boring even to me. Okay, well, thank you so much for being on, Johnny. Thank you, Lucita. Wonderful, wonderful comments, questions. I'm really glad we figured out your animal stack, and hopefully.
And Christine was very active too. This
As
is
well, thank you, Christine. And I hope Monique also can figure out your animal stack. I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts. So feel free to post on the Discord with your conclusions, even your tentative conclusions. And yeah, really enjoyable. So really good to see you all. Thank you so much. Wonderful. Okay, take care. I'm gonna